With the first pick,
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome to the Fantasy Rant podcast. I am Dan Baker, and we are back to our original trio today. I'm here with my co-hosts Evan Gooding and Mason Beck. Today, we will be going over the latest NFL news. We'll introduce a brand new segment, and we will be going over our Dynasty Tight End Rankings. If we have time, maybe we'll dip into a rookie mock draft, but we'll see how it goes. All right, so we're deciding to do the fun fact at the beginning of the show and give you guys an opportunity throughout it to try and answer. So the fun fact that we're kicking off, which wide receiver ended his Hall of Fame career with more tackles than drops? If you think you know it, give it a shot. We'll give you the answer at the end of the show. And then first and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to everybody tuning into the Stadium Rant original. And we're going to give you a little ad read here.
Thank you so much for listening to the Stadium Rant original. If you like our content, you should subscribe to our free newsletter, which will include exclusive interviews, articles of the week, and discounts on Stadium Rant merchandise. Visit StadiumRant.com to sign up for our newsletter today.
All right. Without further ado, Mason, what do we got with the news?
All right, so for the first piece, we got something that was a little bit of a scary news for some Bengals fans. Joe Burrow went down on a non-contact play in practice and was needed to be carted off. Turned out to be a calf injury, and he'll just be missing a couple weeks of training camp. Won't be missing any game time or anything. But do you think this calf injury this early, before season, is something to watch over and to worry about drafting Burrow?
I'm not too worried about drafting him. I would have benefited if it was an Achilles. That everyone was going crazy when that video dropped. I definitely, with the way he was reaching towards his calf, I thought he might be out for the season. Glad to hear he's not. Football's a little bit better when we got all of these elite quarterbacks playing each other. So happy to hear he's still cleared of an injury, and I won't be worried about drafting him.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I'm not worried about drafting him, not even in redraft. Even if he misses a couple weeks, down the season, he's going to be able to help you out. That offense is just absolutely loaded with weapons. I would be worried about having to pick up, more QB depth, though. So that just might be something to be cautious of.
Yeah, no, I still don't think there's many quarterbacks that can match his production in fantasy. Even if he did miss a week or two, like you said, it's, those other 14 weeks that you have of fantasy are going to be pretty valuable.
For sure.
But then we're going to be switching to more Dalvin Cook news. It looks like the odds are switching towards the Jets is going to be where he's signing. It seems more likely that's where he's kind of wanting to go to. Do you guys think this lowers Breece Hall and redraft a ton or Dynasty as well?
Yeah, definitely both for me. Redraft definitely more so. I wouldn't even touch him probably in the first 6 rounds at this rate. If Dalvin Cook joins there, I'm hoping Cook doesn't go there. I'm hoping Cook that he goes to, Dan's gonna hate this, but the Patriots. I hope that they just add him in there and just give Rondamore Stevenson somebody to take an edge off of him every now and then too, because Cook's not looking for a huge. I don't think he's looking for a huge workhorse load at his age too. So it might be a better fit there. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you already touched on it. My Ramondre Stevenson shares are very happy with this news. I was very worried. I got him as my lead RB1 in a few dynasty leagues. I definitely think this is a huge loss for anybody who has Breece Hall, though. At least I don't know how long they're looking to sign Dalvin Cook. I wouldn't imagine it'd be more than 2 years at the most. I'm thinking maybe $6 million with incentives to get up to 8. Aaron Rodgers taking that pay cut, and we'll touch on that as well, really opens the doors for them to bring in more talent. So this might not be it. Probably it for the running back room. They got plenty of solid running backs. I didn't see them making this move, having Abanikanda, Michael Carter, even Bam Knight. He was doing well in their absence. So with all of those viable running backs in New York, I definitely think Breece Hall takes a huge hit in terms of his redraft value.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that they're even going after Dalvin, if it's really serious, it shows that Breece Hall really is not as healthy as we thought he was. If he was, close to 100%, why would they really need to go sign this veteran back? Anyways, Breece Hall killed it when he was healthy last year. So I think Breece Hall is a lot to worry about in redraft for sure. And I mean, even if Cook goes there for like 2-3 years, that still ruins Breece Hall over those 2-3 years. He's never going to be that workhorse guy if Cook does go there.
Yeah, for sure.
And then to keep it on more running back news, Alexander Madison and James Cook have both been seen, though they're on different teams, we've heard reports that they're looking more confident in having those guys as third down backs as well.
Yeah.
I got to move James Cook up in my rankings, honestly. He's got to be higher. And Madison for a redraft especially, but Cook in a dynasty, he could be an absolute steal. And he's just still a little bit more to prove. And once he gets a little bit more opportunity this year, which he's seemingly going to get, as well as Madison, he's been waiting in line for this. And now both of them are kind of getting their shot to see what they could do. And I'm excited for both of them.
Yeah, I agree. I've always liked James Cook in terms of just that athleticism. You see him burst through the hole with no remorse, even though he's a smaller back. They don't throw the ball to the running back as much as I would like them to, so I don't know how much this is going to matter, him having the third down role. But we kind of talked about this as soon as Hines went down for the season. We knew James Cook was going to get a higher percentage of the running back targets. So if he can get that and then mix in even 4 or 5 touchdowns, I think he'll be productive enough with the touches on the ground and through the minor passing work they give to their running backs in order to be at least a running back 2 and maybe have some running back 1 upside if he does get, let's say, 8-10 touchdowns.
I definitely think Cook can work his way into even a high RB2 if he does get that passing volume, because Josh Allen is going to have to stop using those legs at some point. They've kind of hinted at that over the past couple of years about how he's going to slow down a little more as far as running.
Right.
That usually when you see that, you see more check downs to their running backs, just easy little escape routes since they can't run and use their legs as much. And I think that could develop into James Cook really becoming a viable pass catcher.
I agree.
Madison,
in years to come. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and then Madison-wise, I think he's taken over every time Dalvin Cook's been hurt. We've seen what he's done. I think redraft, he's a steal. And the ADP he's going right now, dynasty-wise, still worried about him after this year.
Yeah, they haven't brought anybody else in on the Vikings. They still just have Chandler and McBride backing him up. And then Kene, I always have a tough time with his last name.
Wangwu?
Yeah, Wangwu. So I think he's got even more of a lock on a 3-down role in comparison to Cook, since the Bills do have Damian Harris. And we talked about how everybody else around the Bills in upper management, the coaching, they've been talking about Allen slowing down the running. I haven't heard anything from Josh Allen himself saying he's going to do that. And he's never looked like he's trying to slow down on the ground. So we'll see how it goes. But over time, he will have to start checking down more often.
All right. And then we're going to keep it on running backs again. Javonte Williams, he's been cleared for contact, but he's not sure if he'll be able to play for preseason. And he started practicing without any limitations. Do you guys think he will be ready for week 1? That's really the big important question that's been up in the air.
I hadn't until these reports. If they're really giving him no limitations right now, when it's, they could easily ease him into this workload if they didn't think he was ready. If he's practicing right now, taking hits with no limitations, I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be ready for week 1.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for everybody that drafted P. Ryan, but at the same time, it's like I really don't. I really don't, because I mean, what were you thinking in the first place? It's Samaje Perine. Like we've known who he is.
Perine's solid, man. He's not a bad
solid.
back.
He's not a bad backup back. Not a bad backup back. But we knew that that wasn't why they brought him in to be like the starter for. They would have brought in a bigger name if they didn't have that much confidence and they really thought that he was going to be missing time. So this was expected for me, and it seems like Perine was drafted like it was not as expected.
Yeah, I think Javonte maybe has like a week or two where his workload is a little lighter, but most of the season I think he's gonna be 100%. Not really any limitations going throughout the season. He's gonna be pretty much their workhorse. Perine is
Which
a
is
little bit
shocking.
weird. Yeah.
Javonte tore the ACL. I think it was like the PCL or something like that, and then there was plus. They said something along the lines of he like tore a muscle either in his like quad or calf. I was just reading up on it recently. So like the fact that he's recovered this quickly is insane. And like right now in redraft, you can get him in the 7th round. Even if he misses a few weeks or takes a while to ramp up, that's well worth that ADP. And the reason why I still like Perine, Sean Payton's always used 2 backs. It's always been Kamara and Ingram or Latavius Murray or somebody else. So I really do think that Perine will still have standalone value throughout the entire season, even when Williams is 100%. But that being said, I don't have tons of faith in the Broncos offense just snapping back into form. We'll have to see how far Russell Wilson can take them.
All right. And then we got Brock Purdy, who is going to be no longer scheduled with off days within a couple weeks. He's started being worked in last week, I believe. He was slowly eased back into it. And he started off looking pretty sloppy, but now he's been looking more up to form. It's really looking more like he's going to be the week 1 starter, meaning nobody else, like Lance has not looked good in training camp. Darnold is actually kind of looking like the best QB for the Niners right now. It's surprising. But if Purdy goes week 1 and Darnold is ruled as their backup, do you think Lance has really any value at that point?
They're talking like they're not going to trade him either. They're saying that, and I understand why would you trade somebody at their lowest value. But yeah, it's just not looking good for Trey Lance. The funny thing is everyone's talking about how now Brock Purdy has to knock off the rust. Trey Lance also had an injury to his throwing arm, and no one's talking about knocking off the rust or giving him any leeway. Everyone's just dunking on Lance. And I mean, I guess if you have Sam Darnold listed above you in the quarterback depth chart, maybe you should be dunked on a little bit. But at this point, I think he's just in Shanahan's doghouse, and people don't tend to come out of that anytime soon. So,
yeah. I think that the fog's starting to clear on that question mark for sure, and it's starting to look more like Purdy. But I saw some report Lance did really, really bad. Like he on a series he like made 1 completion, and it was like he had I think 5 attempts. That's all they gave him. So not giving him a ton of opportunity, and he's not looking great in it. That's not great to see. So
yeah,
not looking good.
Greatest trade ever for the Niners.
How about you, 49ers fan? What do you think?
I'm really not liking Lance at all. Like, he's not. Well, I mean, obviously, there's still some opportunity there. I'm not completely dogging on him. I don't think he's completely out of the water. But I think if Darnold is the backup, I don't think there's really much chance for Lance to ever get a play time because. I mean, unless we get the whole quarterback injury, but when you're listed as a 3rd string quarterback, that's kind of where your career goes to.
I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be the nail in the coffin for sure. Yeah.
They're going to have to roster all 3 too, because if they put them on the practice squad, someone can come in and steal them away. So they're going to have to roster all 3 quarterbacks throughout the season.
Oh yeah, they probably will. All right, and then more quarterback news. Aaron Rodgers, he signed a 2-year contract worth $75 million with the Jets. So this is going to keep him with the team through 2024. So we got 2 more
Yeah.
years of Aaron Rodgers. I think.
2 more years. I mean,
rankings?
took a team. Oh, sorry. What?
Just asking. Do you think it moves it? Do you think that moves him up in your rankings a lot, giving him that extra year of playtime?
Well, so he was already signed to 2 years, but he was going to make $110 million. So that's a $35 million pay cut. That's massive. He's showing that he wants to win more so than he wants to get paid. We know Aaron Rodgers will make that money back through endorsements and God knows what. He's in New York City now too, so there's going to be plenty of opportunities for him to make his money back. But I think this really does a lot for the Jets in terms of their maneuverability. If they have any more injuries pop up, they can make moves if they need to. I think this is going to cause problems in the NFC or the AFC East. I can't see the Jets finishing any lower than 10-7. I'd say right now. Between that defense and the weapons around Rodgers, I think they really got a shot to upset some teams.
Yeah, and especially if they add Cook. If they add Cook, that's the best RB room in the league, easy, in my opinion. But I think that I expected him to be in New York for more than 1 year, so this is not exactly still what I expected to. But how good he's going to be in the system is still a question mark for me as well.
And I mean, I think him reworking the contract shows he's not going to, do his yearly thing of trying to, see if he wants to play or not. I think it shows he's truly committed to this team.
For sure.
For 2 years. But, and then, all right. And then another very big news that Jonathan Taylor requested a trade from the Colts. All reports have led towards the team has no interest in trading him, and that they're going to try working on something. But on top of that, one of their backup running backs, Zach Moss, suffered a broken arm and is expected to miss at least 6 weeks. This coming after JT's trade request could lead to a lot of uncertainty in that back room. We got rookie Evan Hull in there, and then we got Deion Jackson if JT isn't playing, and Zach Moss. So how do you think this whole running back room situation is really going to even work out?
Yeah, I didn't get the chance to. Everyone jumped on it while I was at work, but Deion Jackson, I think he takes a step up in the RB depth chart. I think Hall still is just more of a receiving back. I think he can take over the former Hines role, and he can make the most out of that. It'll be a little bit limited with Anthony Richardson being quarterback. I think we're all expecting him to take off on the ground a little bit more than he dumps off. But if they don't get Jonathan Taylor to stay, if they already said they're not going to trade him, they won't trade him near the trade deadline, or said they're just not going to trade him. But I don't know if either of these guys are a good guy to play a game of chicken with. Like you got Taylor and Irsay. I think both obviously believe in themselves. Taylor, probably a top 3 back just in terms of talent, not fantasy wise. But it's tough. He deserves the money. The running back market is just completely deflated. But hopefully they get him to stick around. And if not, take Deion Jackson where you can.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bigger issue, that Jonathan Taylor's really mad about. And I get it, taking it out on the team because that's all you have as kind of seemingly as an option. But drama. Like how often do we find like that the drama in situations like this are good for either side? I don't think that it's ever good for either side. It's not good for Jonathan Taylor. It's not good for the Colts. The Colts are really in trouble. Like they have a brand new quarterback that they're expecting to have Jonathan Taylor be have behind there with him. So that's a big red flag for me from the Colts organization standpoint. And if I have Jonathan Taylor, it's a big red flag for me. I'm going to have trouble sleeping at night for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
but I don't have any shares, so I'm not worried about it.
I don't think Jonathan Taylor's going anywhere. Obviously, they said that they don't want to trade him, and they have no intention to. running backs really have no say in the market right now. We have already seen that. We've talked about it. It's a very interesting time for him to go out and request a trade when they've proven that everyone just wants to replace him pretty much, and they're very replaceable. But I think he's going to stick there. Maybe I think this means long term he's not going to stay with the Colts because there's obviously some other issues there. I still think he should be drafted around where he is right now and where he has been. It's not really something to worry about too much as far as this year. But I think the whole backup situation definitely gets interesting, especially if Taylor goes down now, because there's no set backup at all now. I mean, there never really was, but with Zach Moss going down, it makes it a little more interesting.
Yeah. I'm just really hoping that Jonathan Taylor gets a deal. I'm tired of these running backs getting the short end of the stick here. Even if you just what Cole Kmet just got signed for 4 years, 12 mil average, and yet we can't get Saquon Barkley that money or that contract. It's ridiculous. But yeah, they did it to themselves by being so damn good. All right. Let's see. We got the Hall of Fame game coming up on Thursday. So in honor of that, we have a new segment. We are going to be doing, are they worth a second? And when we talk about a second, we're talking about second round rookie draft picks. So there's a little bit of a range of rookies that you can go for in that second round. Still a lot of upside, but definitely a much smaller hit rate than the first round. So we will be taking players from the two teams playing, the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. Our first player, we have Aaron Rodgers. Would you trade a second for Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would, especially with the new contract like we're talking about. It gets a little bit more guaranteed stability. Like I said, I kind of expected that as well. But this is just a quarterback, especially in super flex leagues. These are incredibly hard to come by. And, I'd almost argue that you could get background, first round draft capital in, 2023 draft if you haven't had your rookie mock yet for him.
Yeah, that was a quick, important distinction really quick. We operate, most leagues in Dynasty are super flex leagues. So we are talking about 2 QB leagues specifically. Mason, would you trade a second to get Aaron Rodgers back?
I would definitely probably do it if you're in a situation where you have a chance at winning. Obviously, if your team's, down in the dirt where you got to really rebuild hard, no way, because he might only have 2 more years, maybe 3, left on him. But yeah, if you're in a situation to win, I think he's worth a second. Maybe not like a 201, 202 pick, if there's someone there that you really want. But I think mostly in the second round, I'd trade for Aaron Rodgers.
I agree with you. When you get to that 201 range, you're looking at guys like A-Chain, Mayer, Laporta, Miller, Mingo. I think those guys all have a lot of upside and could fall into a significant role. But if you're talking super flex leagues, quarterbacks, you really need to have 2 viable quarterbacks. And Rodgers got weapons around him. Obviously, it's a big tier gap after Garrett Wilson. But Corey Davis is a viable wide receiver 2 or 3. Same with Lazard. You got McCole Hardman as your gadget guy. I think they're going to use him in pre-motion a lot. And then obviously you got all of those running backs we just mentioned earlier. And then Conklin and Uzama, not great tight ends, but they can still get the job done. Definitely going to be red zone threats for Rodgers. So I would definitely lean Rodgers in over a second. So that's going to bring us to our next player. We're doing 1 at each position. We're taking a leap of faith here, but we have Dalvin Cook as our second option. New York Jets, Dalvin Cook. Mason, why don't you kick it off this time? Do you think he is worth a second round pick?
I'm kind of going to go with what I said last time with Aaron Rodgers. If you're in a win now situation, definitely. I think win now any second round pick is worth if you're in a situation where you're really needing that RB position. But if your team's not looking like this is the year, I say you pass on him. I would honestly trade nothing before 206 for Dalvin Cook at this point, unless I was very desperate for running backs in a what now situation.
Yeah, it'd be later for me, much later. Like I can't, especially with Delvin. If he goes to the Patriots or the Jets, can we really trust them to get a lot of as a contender? Like, do you really want Dalvin Cook in there, knowing that you have Brees Hall that you're competing with, or Ramondre for carries? That's kind of that's pretty stiff competition, and not something I'd be comfortable trading the second round capital for personally. He's more of like a early third round, what I would expect to get for him.
I agree. In this offense with so many talented running backs on the roster, I lean towards the second round pick, unless it's the 211, 212. Like I'm probably going to take the second rounder over him. Even if I am win now, I think that Cook just has such limited upside now in this offense. We're so used to him being a workhorse back, and I just don't see that being an option for him in New York. So I would also take the second and hope to hit on a guy with a lot of upside. All right. So now we have our third player. It's going to be Allen Lazard. Evan, would you trade a second round pick for Allen Lazard?
This one was the toughest out of all four of them that we got here. But I think I would. I think I would trade a second for Allen Lazard. I think they signed him for 4 years, if I'm not mistaken, 3-4 years. So that's a healthy amount of years for a wide receiver at his age. And they do have Garrett Wilson, but he's already popping up with some injuries in the preseason. So if anything does happen in season, Allen Lazard, is an easy starter for any fantasy lineup, I would say. But that is a lot of if then. So it's a risky one. I don't like it, but I would trade away the second for him.
You were right. 4 years, $44 million contract, and he doesn't have too much worries about the dead cap. It's going to be $18 million through 2024. Drops off a little bit then, but you got at least 2 solid years with Rodgers. Yeah. All right, Mason, what do you think? Allen Lazard or a second?
I would usually take the second. I think Lazard is a great pass blocker, and they're going to use him a lot as more in that role. And Wilson's obviously going to be their number one. They're going to use their running backs especially if they get Cook a lot. They got Hardman as their gadget guy, like you said. They even went and got Randall Cobb, correct? Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he's going to be used as a primary receiver ever and really be, in that wide receiver 1 or 2 spot that you can get with the second round pick. It's going to be a more run-based offense, I think, a lot more than it was in Green Bay. And even there, Lazard never was an amazing receiver.
Right. I was going to touch on that as well. Last season, most games, he was over a 90% snap share. He still only had 60 receptions, 788 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That was with Romeo Doubs missing time. That was with Christian Watson missing time, and both were rookies kind of coming into their own. He was their de facto number 1 in Green Bay, and really this is Garrett Wilson and then everybody else. I think that the ball will get spread around, and him already having a connection with Lazard will help. But personally, I think Corey Davis is just as talented as him. And I think everyone after Garrett Wilson will have their games, but not something that you can rely on. So I agree with you, Mason. I would also take the second over Allen Lazard. All right. Our last player to talk about, we have David Njoku. We were only able to fit in one Brown here. Everyone else seemed very evidently on one side or the other of the scale. But David Njoku, Mason, would you trade away a second round pick for David Njoku?
This year, I would say, depending what your conference is with like Laporta and, you can get Mayer there early in the second. I think that's kind of depending on your preference there of those 3 tight ends. I think definitely a mid to later second round pick. Yes, all the time. But yeah, no, it really depends on your preference if you like Laporta or Mayer more and if they're there and available for you.
Yeah, I do like Laporta and Mayer there more. I mean, they're younger, so they're going to have more time. Actually, according to my rank, I'm going to go against my rankings here. I do have Njoku above them listed, a little sneak peek. But I do like the youth. I value the youth, and Njoku, he had an amazing year, but every year before then, he hasn't really done. He's had spurts of great games, but nothing to prove as a reliable fantasy asset for me.
I would definitely take Njoku, and this is not me being a homer. He just has the extension. He's going to be signed through 2025. He's got the money to back him up. He's got a good quarterback to target him. And in the past 2 years, the Browns haven't been any lower than fourth in terms of their tight end market share. It's going to be something you hear us talk about a lot in our upcoming tight end ranking segment here. But the Browns target the tight end a ton. 28.5% last year, tied for third, or that was 2021, and then 26.3% last year, fourth spot there. They just love targeting the tight end. I'm not too worried about Harrison Bryant coming up and taking away snaps from him. So, and he's used as the receiver. He's a solid blocker, but he is more so seen as a very athletic tight end. That's what I'm looking for. As much as I do like Laporta and Mayer a little bit less so, I just think Njoku's athleticism is unmatched, and I do expect the Browns to pass more this season. So I'd be happy to get Njoku for a second if possible. All right, so before we dive into our tight end rankings here, we got a little message from the crew.
It's 2023. The NFL is king, and it seems like everyone is getting into fantasy football. So why not get a reward fit for the throne? The best trophies, belts, rings, and punishment tokens in the game are available at TrophySmack.com. Tell them your pals over at StadiumRant sent you.
And you can find the Trophy Smack at any article on Stadium Rant. Take a visit to StadiumRant.com. Give it a peek. All right. So that brings us into the main stage of the show. We have our tight end rankings here. We will be going tier through tier and talking about our biggest differences. If you can already see, someone has TJ Hawkinson as their number one tight end. Really quick, I'll dive through the other ones. As Fantasy Rant consensus ranking, we have Travis Kelce number 1, Kyle Pitts number 2, Mark Andrews number 3, TJ Hawkinson number 4. All right, Mason. TJ Hawkinson at number 1, man. Explain yourself.
All right, so TJ Hawkinson last year finished as tight end 2. This was even with him switching teams, having to learn 2 systems. We saw him go to Minnesota and how good he already was doing, just learning that system. He's only 26 years old. Vikings did go out and get him. They show they got a lot of faith in him. He's been consistent when he's been healthy for the last 3 years. This is his last year in contract. I think they'll work something out with him. And if he stays with the Vikings, Kirk Cousins is a reliable providing quarterback to fantasy receivers and tight ends. We've always seen him be that reliable guy. I don't have a ton. Like Kyle Pitts is obviously talented. Just Atlanta situation is a little rough for him right now. If it improves shortly, maybe I could move Kyle Pitts up. And obviously I think he's above Kelce because Kelce's got who knows how many more years. And I think Mark Andrews, it can't be argued to be number 1 either because Baltimore went out. They got receivers. This is one of the first times Lamar's going to actually have a pretty, above average receiving core, hopefully. I think Mark Andrews is going to get the ball a lot less.
Interesting.
Yeah. You're upset about or I guess not upset, concerned about Mark Andrews for the additional wide receivers. What about the addition of Addison? Hawkinson was the second best target last year for the Vikings, but now with the addition of Addison, I don't see that being the case. I see Addison being the second best receiver on this team.
Well, I mean, they did get rid of Thielen. They did lose him. Obviously, Addison will probably be better than Thielen was this last year. But still, I mean, I don't think it's going to dig into his target share too much. And I think TJ Hawkinson is a guaranteed top 5 tight end no matter what for the next 5-6 years. And, that's hard to come by, a solid producing tight end all the time in fantasy.
Some good justification.
Yeah, I mean, top 5 isn't too hard to do for tight ends. There's usually a big disparity from number 1 tight end to number 5. I just don't see Hawkinson being there yet. Last season, he had 9 games with the Vikings. He had over 60 yards in just 4 games. He only had a touchdown in 2 of those games. He had over 5 catches in 5 of those games. And really that big, number 2 tight end finish came from his 13 catch, 109 yard and 2 touchdown game. Outside of that, he lacked consistency. He got a lot of targets, but he didn't always do a lot with them. So I have Mark Andrews as number 1 personally. TJ Hawkinson, he's in the last year of his contract. Even if he does get extended, we have Kirk Cousins in the last year of his contract. So there's really a question at quarterback. If he gets a rookie, then we know usually they cannot support more than 1 top 24 wide receiver. I honestly don't know the facts behind the tight end side of what rookies can support, but that's going to Justin Jefferson. There's going to be at least 170 targets going to Justin Jefferson every year he's healthy. Mm-hmm. So I don't see that in Baltimore. I think Zay Flowers has a ton of talent. I think Rashad Bateman can come into an important role, but there's no Justin Jefferson in Baltimore. Mark Andrews is that dude. He's a big guy. He's only 27 years old still right now. And Lamar's locked up. Andrews is locked up for another 3 years. It's just, to me, it's hands down Andrews, in my opinion. Andrews last year had 12.7 points per game, and that's with 5 of those games coming with Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley. But yeah, Andrews, to me, was performing close to his his basement, close to his floor. That's what I should say. Whereas Hawkinson, I think, was performing at his ceiling, and I just don't see Hawkinson getting that many targets as he was during that time. And then one last thing, not to jump on it. Ravens have been first, fifth, and first in terms of tight end market share. They targeted their tight end over 40% of the time in 2 of those 4 seasons. The Vikings have finished 12th, 27th, 16th, and 9th in the past 4 seasons. So I just think it's Andrews. I will die on that hill, but each their own. All right, tier 2, we got Dallas Goedert, Dalton Kincaid, George Kittle, Darren Waller, and Pat Freiermuth. We have Evan with Dalton Kincaid up at tight end 4, while me and Mason have him at tight end 7. Evan, explain yourself.
Yeah, I mean, this one's a little bit probably steaming off the fumes from the off-season hype that we're hearing. I mean, he looks incredible out there, though. I mean, if you look at what he did last year, too, 890 yards. He ranked 55th in all of college football for reception yards. That includes wide receivers, so 55th, including wide receivers. He was just under just Brock. I think that is who he has. Who was under for tight ends. That's not bad. I'm happy with that. And I'm even more happy with the draft capital he got and 0 competition added from a wide receiver position for the Bills. Bills didn't take anybody. I think they just had that Justin Shorter that they added and nobody else in the tight end room. So they're pretty confident in him being their guy, and I think he's going to do really well. The Bills are a top 5 offense in the NFL. And Josh Allen, in his entire career, has never had a true route runner at the tight end position, and I think that this is his first experience with that. I think he's going to like it.
Yeah, I love Dalton Kincaid. I think in the pre-draft process, while everyone was hyping up Michael Mayer, I had Dalton Kincaid as my tight end 1. Obviously, the landing spot helps a ton. I only have him at tight end 7 because I do still believe in the tight ends ahead of him a little bit more, just a little bit unproven of a situation. And then on top of it, Buffalo really does not target the tight end position much. In the past 3 years, they were the third lowest, first lowest, and third lowest. Never had a tight end market share of above 13.8%. And even with the Bills' high passing volume, that ended up being about 78 targets to the position, not just Dawson Knox or anything, like the entirety of the position. So if he ends up with even 90%, which is unrealistic, while still having Dawson Knox there, of those 78, maybe it goes up to 100. It's still only 80 targets, catch rate around, let's say, give him 60 catches. I just don't see him quite there yet. But the hope is that they use Dalton Kincaid not as a tight end, but split out wide as a wide receiver, big slot guy. If they can do that and mix him in to the offense in a bunch of fun ways, he will shoot up my tight end rankings very quickly.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, I think he's going to be a pretty good tight end. I just don't think he's necessarily going to be number 4 tight end in as far as value and for Dynasty. Like you said, they're not a tight end passing team. Dawson Knox, he's going to be there.
I liked it. I liked your Dynasty thing. Maybe I should say I'm in a bunch of Dynasty leagues.
Teams change, though. Teams change, This is the first time that they've drafted a tight end this high in the history of the franchise. They've never drafted a tight end this high. So
Really?
It shows they're high in him, but still, Diggs is there too. He's always going to be their number 1. And then I think Shakir is going to have a bigger role than some people think. And Gabe Davis, I mean, he's always in there for that long ball guy. And so it kind of factors how much of that can Dalton Kincaid really mix into. And there's is going to be these other guys. And we talked about James Cook could be working more down as a third down back. Could be taking some receptions too. He might be a touchdown beast, I think, honestly, but I don't think he's going to produce a ton of yardage necessarily.
No, that's a great point too. I feel like no one's talking about Khalil Shakir anymore. I really liked him coming out of college. Dude is gritty. He gets after it, and they were kind of using him more so as like a field stretcher just because of where he was in the depth chart. But he can do it all. He can get gritty over the middle, break some tackles. He's not an insane athlete, but he's got some size at the wide receiver position. And I think he would be a good guy to target. Say if you can throw a late third at him, go grab him and see what he can become. All right, this brings us to our next tier. We have David Njoku, Greg Dulcich, Sam Laporta, Evan Ingram, Michael Mayer, and Chigoziem Okonkwo. So on this one, we didn't have any real differences. We were all basically in the same tiers. Absolutely crazy. Even between us and the Fantasy Pros Expert Consensus Rankings, we were all pretty knotted up. So what I'll ask you then is name one player from this tier that you see taking a true step up next year. Evan, we'll start off with you.
True step up next year? That's a tough one. Well, I'm going to have to go Trey McBride. I was really disappointed with his outing this last season, his rookie season, but he was a rookie, and they did have just a guy named Zach Ertz there to take away some targets. So I really have high expectations for him still going forward. I do think that Zach Ertz, his best years are behind him, and they're going to really try to feature him more in the offense and being Trey. I hope so, at least, and hopefully he could do a lot with it.
I will say he was not in this tier for us.
Oh, I thought this was tier 3.
You're looking at the Fantasy Pros one.
Tier 3 or tier 2? Okay.
Good enough argument for me to keep it in there. I agree with you. Zach Ertz is recovering off of a late season. I believe it was ACL. Regardless of what it was a big injury. He's not likely coming back anytime soon. He's an old man now. I believe he's 31. And I agree with you. Trey McBride should take a massive step up next year. Mason, do you have anybody inside of our tier 3 that you'd like to touch on?
Sam Laporta. I think just the landing spot is great for him. Dan Campbell knows his tight ends. I think he's going to develop Sam Laporta into a great one. I think that Goff may not always seem like the most flashy quarterback, but he gets the ball out. He produces for fantasy wise, and I think Laporta could be moved up into tier 2 next year. I'm not necessarily counting on that, but I think he's definitely always going to be a top 12 tight end in the league for the rest of his. I'm liking that. I'm saying for rest of career wise, I think he's a very good long-term choice. Maybe his first year isn't the best because sometimes tight ends start off a little slow, but I think down the line he's going to be a great long-term option.
And now that I know what planet I'm on and what tier we're in, I'd probably say Waller for mine. Waller. But
interesting.
Yeah,
so even with
Mason.
Even with him being touch. Hold on, you said now that you know what planet we're in, Waller's tier 2. Look on the left side, my dude. You're still in the wrong tier. We're in Njoku to Okonkwo.
But he's in my tier 2. He's in my tier 2.
We're on tier 3.
Now we're on tier 3.
You guys back to this planet, my friend.
Maybe I'm not back on this planet, yeah.
All right. Out of all of the tier 3 tight ends, I would say Greg Dulcich. There's been talks of Sean Payton calling him the guy that is going to be a matchup nightmare. He was always saying it didn't have to be position specific, but he would always find one player to highlight that he thinks is going to be a problem for defenders to cover, regardless of their position. He's used Kamara in creative ways in the past. He was talking about Dulcich just being that matchup nightmare, and with Cortland Sutton likely being out the door, Marvin Mims still being a little bit questionable. Tim Patrick, we didn't bring that up in the news segment, but he's seems to be out for the season as well. And then Javonte still growing into his own role. I really think that Greg Dulcich could take a massive step up next year. He's already shown his athleticism last season. He's was a little bit boomer bust, but a funny quote from Sean Payton is he was trying to get a hold of what Dulcich was trying to do in the offense. And I verbatim, he quoted, "I don't know what Nathaniel Hackett was fucking doing." None of us do, Sean. None of us know what Nathaniel Hackett was doing. So I think Dulcich takes the biggest step up of this group, but I do like Laporta a lot, as Mason touched on earlier. He's also going to have a big opportunity in the first 6 weeks of the season with Jameson Williams being out. That would be my number 2 guy. All right, so let's get on to tier 4. Evan, tier 4 is Komet through Fan, okay?
Komet through Fan, okay.
You're back at it. He's back at it. Okay, we got him.
Not everything revolves around my rankings. That's all I was saying.
All right, so we got Cole Komet, Trey McBride, Dalton Schultz, Luke Musgrave, Jelani Woods, Isaiah Likely, and Noah Fant. We have Mason with Noah Fant ranked as his tight end 17. He does have him in his tier 4 at least. But how are you still this high on Noah Fant?
Well, I think Noah Fant was pretty solid and didn't very nothing as spectacular, but productive. This last season he had 2 weeks where he was tight end 7 and another where he was tight end 3. At this range, we're kind of looking at some guys that are very, hit or miss. We don't know whether they're even ever going to develop a role in an offense, or whether or not they're on their way out of the league. We're going to get into that range. Noah Fant is only 25. I think he's got that longevity. He's never going to, I think, be your tight end, starting tight end, 1 through 12 best tight end in the league fantasy wise. But for 17, I have him ranked at 17, I believe. That makes sense. That's where he finished last year. I think he'll always stick around that point. And since he's only 25, maybe you get 6-7 solid backup years of a tight end.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely crazy that he's still 25. He's like Amari Cooper early on in his career. He just entered the NFL early, and everyone it's still weird to me that he's played so many seasons and he's only 28, 29 years old right now. I got that same feeling with Noah Fant. It's just that burnout effect. We've heard his name come up. He's so athletic. He's got all the opportunity in the world. And yet he hasn't had a season over 700 yards, nothing more than 4 touchdowns. And now that they have 3 fantastic wide receivers on that team, I just don't see him taking a step up from where he was. So personally, I have him down at tight end 33, big disparage in our rankings. And then Evan, where do you have Noah Fant here?
I have him lower than you even, I think, or maybe a
28.
little bit higher.
He has him at 28.
28, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I do also want to add on, he did finish tight end 17 with Will Dissly, kind of.
That's what I was just going to say. I think he would have finished the year a lot better if he didn't have that little vulture in the back, taking 3 touchdowns off the board for him. But with the addition of the 3 wide receivers, like Dan was saying, I can't see 17. I can't see 17 happening again.
Yeah. All right. So beginning our tier 5, we have Luke Schoonmaker, Irv Smith Jr., Cade Otton, Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee, Juwan Johnson, Mike Gesicki, Dawson Knox, Darnell Washington, and Hayden Hurst. For Darnell Washington, we have a pretty big gap in our tiers or in our rankings. Evan, you have him at tight end 24. Me and Mason at 36, and myself at 34. So what do you see in Darnell Washington's future where you have him ranked so high?
Well, I see a huge 6'7", 264-pound, guy in the future, and that's not going to change. He's going to get more experience, more training from NFL staff, and he wasn't ever showcased as the tight end 1. So that if Muth is still the tight end 1 on this team, that won't be new for him. He's still going to find a way to produce and make some big plays like he did in. If you watch his highlights, he's making huge hurling players, doing things that a 6'7", 264-pound guy should not be doing. Now the usage is going to be the biggest question for him, and with his blocking capability, though, I think that they're going to struggle taking him off the field. They're going to want him to stay on the field as much as possible. I mean, he could completely stop a rusher and then even just bounce off of him and then even become available for a pass too. And I think that his size is going to keep him getting those valuable targets in the red zone as well. And I'm seeing a lot of off-season videos of him working on that, getting that red zone work and getting that training for that too. So it seems like that's where they're going to focus on utilizing him, which is very beneficial for fantasy.
Yeah, I like him as a talent. He has just insane measurables. He's very quick. He ran a 4.64 40-yard dash. He's pretty quick. He had a 97th percentile 20-yard shuttle. It's just he's behind Pat Freiermuth right now. And then on top of it, I think there's only so many red zone threats that you can have to the point where it's going to be watered down for Washington. I do see him as a very good good red zone threat for Pickett, but he's also got Pickens, who's a monster. Freiermuth, he rarely drops passes. He's said that he's never going to drop a red zone pass. He did last year, I know, because he's on my Dynasty roster. But outside of that, I do think Darnell Washington has nothing but upside with the build that he has. I agree that he's going to stay on the field for his blocking. But that's the thing. Blocking's not going to get you any fantasy points. And he's going to be doing that a whole lot. He's already anointed the 6th offensive lineman on a squad. I think that's in his Twitter bio too. Very proud of his blocking. Not going to get us any fantasy points, but he is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think he's a very talented player, just not the best location necessarily for him. Because first of all, Pickett, I mean, I have faith in him, but there's still uncertainty with, how very, how much passing volume he really is going to get out. that team, Steelers honestly have a lot of weapons. A lot of people don't talk about that. I mean, Deontay Johnson's good. We got Freiermuth there, who is in front of Darnell Washington. Najee, even he's a good pass catcher, and he takes away a lot of carries because when he's on, he's on. And then we even got Pickens, who I think is going to be great. And I think it kind of just leaves Darnell Washington in a state of he's not going to get a ton of looks. I think I'm personally not drafting him in any of my rookie drafts.
Yeah. At best, a 4th-round flyer if you got the space. But I agree.
Take him in the early third all day long. I'd be happy with that.
Well, I mean, that's why you got him at 24, and we got him at 34 and 36.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So moving on to our next tier, we have Daniel Bellinger. Let me make sure we got this in the right spot here. We got Daniel Bellinger, Hunter Henry, Tyler Conklin, Tucker Kraft, Logan Thomas, Zach Ertz, and Taysom Hill, who somehow still has a tight end designation. So I have Foster Moreau ranked higher than the rest. I'm sorry. I have Tucker Kraft. That's who we're on right now. I'm getting in Evan's world over here.
Yeah.
I got Tucker Kraft ranked down at tight end 44. Mason, you have him at 35. Evan, you also have him at 35. And ECR has him even higher at tight end 32. The reason why I am so low on Tucker Kraft because they already have their tight end 1. I do believe Luke Musgrave is the better talent. They took him a whole round earlier. They are both at least day 2 guys, but right now I don't see Kraft being anything more than a 5th, maybe even a 6th option on the team. Right now they got Watson, Doubs, Reed, Musgrave, Aaron Jones, who's also locked up for 2 years. And all the guys that I mentioned before are locked up for another 3 years at least. And even A.J. Dillon might get more targets than Tucker Kraft does. And then on top of it all, the Green Bay doesn't pass that much with Aaron Rodgers last year. They had a passing percentage of 56.1%, 56.6%. That was 18th in the league. I do anticipate that dropping off a little bit with Jordan Love taking over. I think they're going to run the ball a little bit more. The good news, I will say, the Packers use 12 personnel pretty frequently. They were second in the league last year in terms of using 12 personnel at 29%. That was the I might have already said that. This is the second highest rate in the league. I just don't see him having any value as a 5th or 6th option. If he somehow takes over the tight end 1 role, we could have another conversation. But I think most people would agree that Luke Musgrave is the better tight end and the better receiving tight end. They're very similar in their stature, their measurables. Luke Musgrave is just a tiny bit better in all of them by 10ths of a second. But what do you guys think? Why do you guys have him a little bit higher?
I think it's personally just because I think Musgrave is going to be the starter there. I think I'm more confident on that. But you never know. Two rookies battling it out. You never know who's going to win out that position. It could end up in a split fifth, kind of going into the season. Jordan Love finds one of them that he turns out to like more. They're getting more chemistry, more plays off. You never know.
Yeah,
I think
I
shot in the dark though.
Yeah, this is definitely like we got him ranked this high because of the chance, the chance that he could get that shot. And I mean, if we're looking at anybody else in this, I see him having about the same chance as everybody else in this tier to that, tight end 1 status, and it's going to be a tougher battle for him for sure because of they just drafted. He's got it in the same draft class, and he might have to face it throughout his career. So. I don't know. It's a tough chance, but it's a risky one, and it could pay off.
Right. I do get what you're saying. When we get to this stage, it's a little bit tough to really say that these older tight ends that we have in the same tiers are going to do anything more. So you guys have them ranked with upside in mind and just the possibility of what could be. I would have him more ranked around where I have Musgrave ranked. But we'll move on to our next tier here. We got Brenton Strange, Foster Moreau, Zach Kuntz, Robert Tonyan, Brevin Jordan, Noah Gray, Jonnu Smith, Albert O, not even trying it, Austin Hooper, and that ends our tight ends through tight end 4. I have Foster Moreau ranked higher than ECR. ECR has him way down at tight end 53. I think that's egregious. I would not have him ranked that low. He is still just 26 years old. He got a fresh new 3-year deal with the Saints knowing that he was going through that cancer battle. They didn't know how that was going to end up, and they still brought him on. They found out through the physical, but then they still went through with the contract. I think that shows faith in him. He's got familiarity with the quarterback there. We got Derek Carr signed for the next 3, maybe 4 years. And then on top of it, I like Juwan Johnson a lot. I think he is a great talent. He's got a lot of speed for his size, but I'm not going to pretend that Juwan Johnson is a locked-in tight end 1 for years to come. He has 2 more years left on his contract. We have Michael Thomas, 31 years old. He's declining. He's got 2 more years on his contract. We have, obviously, Chris Olave locked up for the next 3 years. At least he's a stud. But outside of that, Shaheed's on the final year of his contract. I think there's going to be an opening. I think they could utilize their tight end 2. And really, he has a lot of upside for the upcoming years. After Juwan Johnson leaves, after 2 years, on that 3rd year, it's a little bit of a stash, but if he remains the tight end 1 for this team, I'm willing to keep him on my bench for a couple of years until we figure that out. The Saints also are always in the middle of the pack for tight end market share. They're 20.7% last year. Their tight end position as a whole, 102 targets, 805 yards, 10 touchdowns. That could be spread out a little bit. And I think at this late in the tight end rankings, I'm willing to take my shot on Foster Moreau.
I can't do it. It's too much competition there for me. Yeah, I know you mentioned it. It's only maybe potentially a temporary thing too, but they could also potentially add more down the line too. And when Foster Moreau was given the opportunity, I was depending on him because I had Waller last year in my team, and I picked him up thankfully and was able to have a fill-in replacement for my tight end position. But he really didn't do that great down the stretch. I was thankful to have Waller back because towards the end of the season there was 2 games he got over 9 points. So or over 2 games we got over 6 points. So I don't think that he was as reliable of a fill-in as people have kind of sought him to be or think or see him to be. I don't see how he ever reaches that tight end 1 potential. He was given the opportunity and couldn't make it happen in my eyes.
Yeah, I think there's too many weapons in New Orleans and too many options for them to use to really give a backup tight end opportunity. I mean, I think it's going to be a pretty big run-based team. They went and picked up 2 guys, 2 running backs, Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams. And I mean, they still have Kamara. Even if he does get suspended, he's going to be there for a majority of the season. Michael Thomas is going to be back. Juwan Johnson's the starting tight end. Chris Olave, obviously, even Rashid Shaheed. And I mean, Taysom Hill. I would put them all getting more targets, more touches than Foster Moreau. And I mean, when you're down to that makes it like the 7th, 8th option, unless a bunch of injuries happen, you're kind of not fantasy relevant at all.
Right, I get what y'all are saying. I mean, I still only have him at tight end 36. So the guys that are surrounding him, nobody worth noting, really. We got a couple of guys that are a little bit younger, have some upside ahead of them. Behind them, though, I really couldn't see myself putting anybody else in front of him. Guys like Bellinger, Taysom Hill, Henry, Logan Thomas, Jake Ferguson. There's no way he's slipping down further than that for me. He's still young. He still has opportunity. Also, Derek Carr targets his tight end of any quarterback in their career that has over 1,000 passing attempts in their career. He targets the tight end at 27% of his throws. That was fourth of those quarterbacks that I mentioned within that range. Only Mahomes, Carson Wentz, Jimmy G, and Lamar Jackson target their tight end more. What do those guys have in common? Stud tight ends. They got Kelsey, Andrews, Wentz had Ertz, and and Garoppolo has Kittle. So I still think that there's room for growth for Foster Moreau, but again, he's ranked this late for a reason. He is the tight end 2 on his own team. There's going to be some time before he can step into a tight end 1 role. All right, so
I'd be curious to see what his what Derek Carr's target share would be to the tight end position without Waller.
Without Waller would be interesting. There's no way I'm going through it.
I don't think it would be as high.
I
think that there would be a statistically significant difference.
Right. I mean, Waller's missed a lot of time over that time. So for him to be even 27%, I'll take that. But you're right. Waller's still a stud when he's healthy. So it would be interesting to see where he falls in along those lines. But we are at the end of the show. We have one last little fun fact for you here. If you haven't already taken a shot at it, the answer to our question, which wide receiver ended his Hall of Fame career with more tackles than drops? Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald, known for his hands, and had his fair share of bad quarterbacks. So sign him up at safety. Let's see what he can do. But let's see here. And then to end the show, we got a little ending message from our friends. Take a look.
Pats Nation, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is your time to shine. As Stadium Rant's dynamic duo, the champion of the peeps and the host with the most, Pat Pitts and Soar the science guy Vora, break down all things that are happening with New England. Check out Gillette Gazette on Stadium Rant's YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe to never miss a show.
And that show's coming up at 8:30. You guys got them up next. Stay tuned for Gillette Gazette. And thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you guys.
See you.